Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Journey. In this episode, I want to discuss how flawed masculinity has impacted men, women, and society at large. Men have typically been displayed as these hardened, unemotional beings, and I want to bring to your attention some of the realizations I had around my masculinity and how it has impacted my life. Masculinity is a set of roles, behaviors, and attributes that are considered appropriate for men and boys in a given society. It is a social construct that can vary by culture and group and is identified socially, historically, and politically, where some behaviors considered masculine are influenced by biological factors. Masculinity is not biologically driven. It is driven by those who have the power and resources to set the standard. Masculinity involves displaying attitudes and behaviors that signify and validate maleness and being recognized in particular ways by other men and women. Some examples of masculinity include strength, courage, loyalty, self reliance, risk taking, resilience, and generative fatherhood, more like caring, leading, and mentoring. And on the flip side of that, we have feminine traits such as nurturance, sensitivity, sweetness, supportiveness, gentleness, warmth, passivity, cooperativeness, expressiveness, modesty, humility, empathy, affection, tenderness, and being emotional, kind, helpful, devoted, and understanding have been cited as some stereotypically feminine traits. I want to talk about toxic masculinity really quickly, just so that we can have an idea of, what we're talking about when it comes to masculinity. And so, toxic masculinity is a term that describes the negative aspects of masculinity, such as misogyny, homophobia, and violent domination. It's also an attitude or set of social guidelines that are often associated with manliness. These traits can include toughness, anti femininity, power, emotional illiteracy, sexual entitlement, and hostility to femininity. Toxic masculinity is an attitude or set of social guidelines stereotypically associated with manliness that often have a negative impact on men, women, and society in general. The term toxic masculinity isn't meant to imply that the idea of masculinity in itself is inherently bad. According to FHCtoday.com, fathers and how they deal with emotions, it's most likely how the son will deal with his. So when dad is not around or is led by the societal definition of what it means to be a man, the door is left open for society to provide to sons unhealthy coping mechanisms around how to deal with emotions. And so, I was really thinking about this a lot, and I was, trying to find where we have some research that actually shows, how we, were programmed earlier in, human civilization of what a man should be and how that has changed over time. And according to ScienceDirect.com, the earliest theory of masculinity in modern psychology was built on a psychoanalytic and personality theories that pretty much ascribes gender mainly to natural, inevitable biological forces. Gender identity theory argues that biological sex and gender are synonymous in healthy, well adjusted individuals. Gender identity is unidimensional, such that gender masculinity means the person has less feminine identity, and vice versa. Healthy, securely adjusted men identify and display characteristics defined as masculine, while also disidentifying with not displaying feminine characteristics. So, in this view, Normative personality development among biological males leads to a masculine gender identity, and deviations such as men with stereotypically feminine gender identity, including homosexual behavior or exaggerated masculinity, for example, hypermasculinity, indicated unhealthy or insecure gender identity development. The conflation of gender and sexuality is noteworthy. Okay, so failure among men to demonstrate masculinity is understood to be problematic, a symptom of gender identity disorder or weakness. And personality tests, such as the attitude interest analysis tests that were designed to measure gender identity, included assessments of specific interests and knowledge of the respondent that were believed to indicate an underlying gender identity. And some data using measures of conventional adjustment at the time indicated that more masculine men were better functioning and healthier. So in the past, it was believed that healthy individuals, displayed typical gender identities. And so we seen that later on, in the late 1970s, that it was advanced that they had an alternative theory, and it was known as gender schema or sex role identity theory. And it was argued that masculine and feminine identity and characteristics vary independently within persons. So it was not that it was just you're either a man or you're a woman and you display these masculine or feminine characteristics. And consequently, individuals could have clearly masculine or feminine identities or an androgynous combination of stereotypically gendered characteristics, or even characteristics not identified with their gender. Androgynous individuals were defined as those who rated themselves as having masculine and feminine characteristics, and substantial data indicated that these individuals were typically the most well-adjusted and mentally healthy. Subsequent gender role theories emphasize more directly the destructive and harmful aspects of masculinity, as well as the stress of fulfilling and of failing to fulfill the roles that were, normative expectations. The general characteristics associated with this role comprise what is referred to as traditional masculinity and include themes of anti-femininity and homophobia, success and achievement, independence, and toughness and aggression, as well as heterosexuality. Beliefs about the normative characteristics that men should display in order to fulfill the male gender role constitute the dominant masculinity ideology. Individuals vary in the context to which they endorse traditional masculine ideology. Belief in and adherence to normative gender role expectations for men is theorized to cause gender role stress and strain, in part due to the contradictory and unattainable aspects of the role, and because many of the role demands are associated with unhealthy behaviors, such as suppression of emotion or aggressive responses to interpersonal conflict. Further, to the degree that the expectations are discrepant from men's inherent characteristics, they experience gender role conflict. And individual variation in gender role conflict is associated with a large range of health risk behaviors and negative health outcomes. So back in the day, men were considered masculine if they had no feminine characteristics. But later on, studies found that men that had an androgynous combination of masculine and feminine characteristics were the most well-adjusted and mentally healthy. And so therefore, the strain that is placed on men to conform to the societal standard of manhood causes behaviors that negatively impact the man's health. And so, according to Muhammad El-Adari, okay, he talks about how a high value man goes in and, looks into himself to find the things that he needs to prioritize in order to have a healthy life and doesn't really rely on a societal standard. And in today's world, many men are seeking ways to find more purpose and meaning in their lives. Men who are high value understand that their lives should be driven by more than just material wealth or societal status. They have an intrinsic understanding that a life well lived is one that is filled with purpose, service to others, and personal growth. Okay. He also discussed how high value men find meaning in their lives and the traits that set them apart from others. And so I'm going to go down this list and I'm going to talk about these traits as to, what they are and how they benefit a man in aspects to him having a more successful and healthy life. So the first one is prioritizing values and beliefs. One of the primary characteristics of a high value man is their ability to prioritize their values and beliefs. They know what they stand for and what they believe in. This clarity of thought enables them to make better decisions and live in alignment with their goals and principles. A high value man's values are often shaped by his upbringing, experiences, and personal beliefs. For instance, some men may prioritize honesty, integrity, and loyalty, while others may place more value on adventure, creativity, and personal freedom. Regardless of their specific values, high value men take the time to reflect on what matters most to them. Okay. And then they make a conscious effort to live in alignment with those values. For example, a high value man who values honesty may choose to be transparent with his partner about his feelings, even when it's difficult to do so. Or a high value man who values adventure may prioritize travel and exploration in his life, even if it means sacrificing some comfort and stability. Having a clear vision of goals, the next one. Okay. High value men have a clear vision of what they want to achieve in their lives. They set specific, achievable goals and then work tirelessly to make them a reality. This gives them a sense of purpose and direction, as well as a feeling of accomplishment when they achieve their goals. Having a clear vision of their goals enables high value men to focus their energy and resources on the things that truly matter to them. A high value man who dreams of starting his own business may take steps to gain the necessary knowledge and experience, network with other entrepreneurs, and even secure the funding required to make his vision a reality. The next one is having a growth mindset. So these men are constantly seeking to improve themselves. They have a growth mindset and view challenges and setbacks as opportunities for learning and development. They understand that failure is not a reflection of their worth as a person, but rather an opportunity to learn and grow. A growth mindset allows men to embrace challenges, take calculated risks, and pursue opportunities that may be outside their comfort zone. A high value man who wants to improve his public speaking skills may take a public speaking course, seek feedback from others, and practice speaking in front of an audience until he achieves the desired level of proficiency. The next one is that they're very driven. So being driven by a sense of service. So these men understand the importance of serving others. They find meaning in their lives by helping others and making a positive impact in the world. They may volunteer their time and resources to charitable causes, mentor others, or work in fields that allow them to make a difference in their lives of others. So by serving others, these men also experience a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that cannot be obtained by material possessions or personal achievements. A high-value man who volunteers at a local shelter may find that the act of helping others gives him a sense of purpose and meaning that he can't find elsewhere. They also prioritize their well-being. And for me, this is a really big one. I would probably make this number one. Okay. Is that you really can't get to all of these other steps without this one. These men understand that their physical, mental, and emotional health are essential for living a purposeful life. They prioritize self care, such as regular exercise, healthy eating, and meditation, which helps them stay balanced and fulfilled. Taking care of their well being allows these men to operate at their best and make a positive impact in the world. A high value man who prioritizes exercise may find that regular physical activity gives him more energy, better focus, and improved mood, all of which can translate into better work performance and personal relationships. Similarly, these men who prioritize mental and emotional health, they may find that practicing mindfulness or meditation helps them stay calm and centered in challenging situations, which can enhance his problem solving abilities and decision making skills. So, prioritizing values and beliefs, having a clear vision of goals, having a growth mindset, being driven by a sense of service, and prioritizing well being, all of these things can be obtained, but only once we start to see what is the masculine person we are now. Okay, we have to go in here and we have to take a look at who we are as men right now. And if this is the kind of man that you want to be, which I totally suggest, um, you have to go in, you have to really be honest with yourself, and you have to really say, who am I today? So that then you can begin to change and you can make these incremental changes so that then you become these, high value men, and you're no longer being controlled by, society's expectation of what a man is, because we have proven studies that show that men who live their life based on a societal expectation of masculinity, they lead very unhealthy lives. The behaviors that they are required to do to, you know, uh, be validated for that masculine role are very unhealthy. And they usually cause a bunch of detriment in your life. When I when I was younger, my father, he never hugged me or told me I love you. And, his discipline as I got a little older, was pretty aggressive. And it wasn't where, he would like hit me, right? But it was one time when I was a kid. And I remember I was probably like 8 years old, 7 years old, and I was in the backyard. And we had got a hold of some of his matches. And, we were under this bush and we were lighting fires, or it was lighting little pieces of paper on fire. And he came out and he found us, and when he, busted me, I took off running. And so I'm running and I try to run in the house, and he kind of, cut me off. He went through the back, and then he met me in the front. And when he met me in the front, he like picked me up and like body slammed me, and it wasn't like really, really hard, but, it was pretty aggressive. And, it was never any real explanation about why he body slammed me, but we did have a talk about the matches and the fire. But later on in life, when I wasn't doing so well in high school, and I had been cutting school for probably like 3 months straight, and I had been answering the phone when the school called. And one morning, he got the call, and they had told him that, hey, your kid ain't been to school in 3 months. And so, he was really upset. And so going forward, the way he would wake me up for school is that he would open my door and he would knock on it. And he would call my name and he'd be like, Jim, get up, Jim, get up. And I would have to stand up, and I was like, this is definitely not a way to get me to want to go to school, but later on in life, I've come to understand that my masculine identity was programmed by my father, and that his identity was programmed by his father. But ultimately, these masculine identities are programmed by societal expectations. And, how to value a relationship with the woman, that was skewed. It was also skewed in the way that I held relationships with other men. And ultimately, the relationship with my inner self was skewed. And I would have no sexual discipline, and would accept the aggressive behaviors displayed by other men as normal and therefore acceptable. And the torment this caused in my life, the realizations I had to come to on my own. I lived my life by pretty much equating my net worth with my self worth. I was programmed to believe that sexual objectification of women was okay. The men around me allowed me to pretty much live my life as though I was an adult, as there was little to no supervision. Society reinforced this kind of thinking as I was celebrated when I did abide by the societal definition of a man. And today I really can see why I struggled so much with sexual discipline for such a long time. All of my relationships were built on a flawed perspective of masculinity. What it meant to be a man to me was built by inappropriate societal masculine expectations. You know, I never saw my grandfather do this, but I've always heard that, he whipped the kids. He was really like, that was his only means of discipline. He cheated on my grandmother. Um, he never told me he loved me. I've never seen him hug his grandkids or his kids, or things like that. And I never really saw my dad cry or show soft emotions until my grandfather passed away. And so for me, it really felt like the soft feminine aspect was non-existent in the men in my family. And I believe that this is what contributed to a lot of their behaviors. Like when I went to jail, I really felt abandoned at the most vulnerable time in my life by, the men in my family. And like when I went to jail, my father, he didn't send me any money. He didn't come visit me. And, at the time, I didn't realize I was being abandoned. But like just recently, I really had to deal with the fact that I really needed my father in some of the hardest times in my life, and he just wasn't there. The guidance around sexual partners, sexual health, even how to lead my life in a good direction was missing. And at times, I do believe that, he never did those things as he did not have the courage to do them and the courage to sit down and have a compassionate talk with me about the dangers of life. And for me, the meaning of courage is to feel fear because we have no options but to have fear because we're humans, but to still move forward. And so today, the younger generation of men in my family have learned through hardship what it truly means to live from a place of courage. And I believe that fear held our fathers to a standard that society placed on them. They learned and repeated the common societal expectations of what a masculine man is supposed to be, only to our detriment. And, I have a bunch of cousins whose fathers were not in their life at all or very short periods of time. And I also have cousins, including myself, that had a father who was around, although their leadership was, distant, cold, and aggressive. And it really fit that societal expectation of what a man was supposed to be. And the idea that my manliness could be attached to the resources of another man or woman has been perpetuated throughout my upbringing. So I wasn't taught that, I have to go out here in the world, create stability for me and my family, with healthy, informative support. And the codependent nature of the relationships really caused me to believe that it was okay to have a woman support me financially with their resources. And I see now that as men, we have to look inside ourselves to understand the beliefs we carry about who we are as men and have the courage to shift the perspective to a more healthy version of the men we know we can be. And my self-worth was truly attached to the lived experiences of a socially accepted masculine man. And, one day I just woke up and I realized that I was the only one betting on me. And I made a conscious decision to move through the world in a way that suited me and not society. I remember saying to myself one day, I don't know what was going on, but it was just so many things that was happening, one thing after another. And I was just like, I'm tired of life happening to me and that I'm about to happen to life. And, after I said that, I was able to put myself through college, obtaining a bachelor's of science in molecular and cell biology. I put my daughter through college where she just graduated in 2023, debt free. I was able to become financially independent as a result of college. And now I'm becoming spiritually abundant as I undergo this masculine rebirth. And so, to really tie these concepts together, I really believe that men and women, that we have to be keenly aware of societal expectations that are placed on, each other. And we must all find within ourselves to find balance between our feminine aspect and our masculine aspect, no matter how society says it should be obtained. The pressure really comes from society, TV shows, media, advertisements, and then it's reinforced in your home life, in your relationships. And men and women must courageously reject the notion that men must conform to societal masculine gender roles that don't serve our highest good. The woes of life are unescapable, and we all must move through them. But to do this, we must also take a very deep and accurate inventory of who we are and how we got to this position in life. And ultimately, the person who has the power to change their situation is you and I. Uh, you know, the pursuit of social acceptance makes you live against yourself. And that false pursuit ends the moment the search for inner acceptance begins. The dormant power of your authenticity awakens through self approval, and it supersedes the approval of the conditioned mind. So stop being afraid of your own power. It's time to harness it and make an impact. I urge the men listening to this message to find the courage to live life from a less traditional masculine role and move into a more balanced masculine and feminine role. I ask that all of the women listening to this message embrace this change, as us men need your support. And so, for me, I really live my life from this place where I ask myself a lot of times, is this, am I being too hard on my son? Am I being too hard on myself? And at most of the time it is. I'm really right in that I need to bring in more of the feminine aspect of compassion, softness, sweetness, understanding. And I find that when I do that, I have the greatest success in my life. Uh, you know, I make sure that I hug my son even when he don't want to. I call it the dead man hug. I'll give him a hug and he'll just have his hands to the side, you know. But he totally understands that his dad is not this big tough guy that always has to lay down the law, you know. He does respect me in that way, but he knows that I am soft. I am kind, I can understand your emotions. I can be vulnerable. And I think that's something that um, societal expectations of masculinity doesn't give men that room to have that vulnerability, even with other men, you know. So I really hope this helps. And until next time, I love you guys.